One of the claims the World Mission Society Church of God makes to substantiate their claim that Ahn Sahng Hong is the second coming of Christ is that he fulfilled what they referred to as the, quote, David prophecy. In sum, King David reigned for 40 years over Israel, beginning at age 30. Jesus is described in the New Testament as the, quote, root and descendant of David, as well as the inheritor of David's throne. As well, Jesus' ministry is recorded as beginning when he was, quote, at about age 30, roughly the same age as David when he ascended to the throne of Israel. For these reasons, the World Mission Society infers that Christ's ministry must last a total of 40 years, as a prophetic fulfillment of David's kingship. However, it must be said that this prophecy is nowhere expressed within the writing of the New Testament itself, nor is there any prophetic connotations to the Old Testament sources. In fact, the New Testament says of Jesus that, quote, he will reign over the house of Jacob forever, and his kingdom will have no end. The length of his ministry is not spoken of with reference to any Old Testament fulfillment. The World Mission Society has invented this prophecy for themselves. So before we continue, the first point of rebuttal to the World Mission Society is that there is no 40-year prophecy of Christ's ministry that needs to be fulfilled. With that established, I'm going to assume the World Mission Society's claim for the sake of argument. Under the assumption that the 40-year, quote, David prophecy is true, the World Mission Society asserts that this means there were 37 years of Christ's ministry that were left unfulfilled in his first coming. After all, he only preached for about 3 years. The claim is that the remaining 37 years would be fulfilled in the second coming. In order for Christ to be recognized in his second coming, and, by extension, the beginning of this 37-year period, this portion of ministry would need to begin at the proper time. What time would that be? Appeal is made to Matthew chapter 24, verses 32 to 35, wherein Jesus describes a fig tree coming into blossom as a parable for the coming of the Son of Man. The World Mission Society points to the fig tree as a stand-in for Israel in Jesus' day. In short, they then assert that the beginning of the blossoming of the fig tree that signified the Son of Man's coming was in 1948, when Israel reacquired statehood. Personally, I hold to the historical fulfillment of Matthew chapter 24, that it pertains to when Christ would come in judgment against Jerusalem, signaling the end of the Old Covenant age, akin to the days of the Lord prophesied in the Old Testament against pagan nations and cities like Babylon and Egypt. In other words, I do not believe Matthew 24 is about the second advent, or the end of the world that is still in the future. At the same time, I know that many Christians do hold to this interpretation, and would point to the creation of Israel in 1948 in keeping with that interpretation. I do not intend to raise a debate about which interpretation is correct in this video. Whichever view you favor, we can both recognize the claims the World Mission Society is making, and we can stand on Scripture and the facts of history to respond to them. Based on their criteria, Christ, now in his second coming, must have begun to fulfill this remaining 37-year period of ministry in 1948. The World Mission Society confidently proclaims that this is when Ahn Sahng Hong was, in fact, baptized, and that it was the beginning of the ministry he carried out until his death in 1985. Therefore, he is the only one who can legitimately claim to be the second coming of Christ. Like most claims that sound too good to be true, this claim about Ahn Sahng Hong does not live up to scrutiny. Records from the Seventh-day Adventist Church that Ahn Sahng Hong was baptized in document his baptism occurring in 1954, not 1948. As we've already stated, there is no 40-year David prophecy. But, even if there was, Ahn Sahng Hong could not have fulfilled it. 1954 to 1985 is only 31 years, not 37. Further, Ahn Sahng Hong did not begin his ministry until 1964, when he established his own church, the Witnesses of Jesus Church of God, a full 10 years later. This means that his ministry lasted only 21 years until his death in 1985, a far cry from the 37 called for by this supposed prophecy. Even by their own standard, Ahn Sahng Hong cannot be the second coming of Christ that the World Mission Society Church of God claims he is. As I have said before, Ahn Sahng Hong was a sinful false prophet. The fact that he is dead is proof of this, for, quote, the wages of sin is death. If Ahn Sahng Hong were, as the World Mission Society believes, without sin as the second coming of Christ, he would not be dead, period. For a further rebuttal to the World Mission Society Church of God's doctrine of Christ Ahn Sahng Hong, please see my prior videos on the subject. If you are currently a member of the World Mission Society Church of God, please read the Bible for yourself and examine its clear, consistent teaching of who Christ really is.